when talking about specific defense mechanisms or adaptive immune system, we basically mainly talk about the role that lymphocytes do. Lymphocytes actually fall into the category of blood cells that we call white blood cells. And the lymphocytes are of two main types here. We have the B lymphocytes and then the T lymphocytes. You see that the B lymphocytes come from the bone marrow. B, bone marrow. And then T lymphocytes basically mature in the thymus. T, thymus gland. Okay? Let's look at each of these types of lymphocytes. B lymphocytes, when you hear B lymphocytes, think about antibodies, nothing else. B lymphocytes, antibodies. So B lymphocytes basically produce antibodies, and like we have said, they are produced in the bone marrow. Okay? They have receptors. Okay? They have what you call glycoprotein receptors that bind to specific parts of the antigen. These cells can differentiate into two types. One, what you call the plasma cells. The plasma cells are actually the ones that produce the antibodies. And then we have what you call the memory cells. You remember them? Yes. The ones that if you are attacked by a pathogen for the first time, the immune system will act on the pathogen, but cells called memory cells will be also made, such that in future, if you're attacked by the same pathogen again, the memory cells will be able to produce the appropriate antibodies. Okay, so we're saying that the B lymphocytes are the ones that produce the antibodies, but also can differentiate into plasma cells that produce the antibodies, and then the memory cells that are used for future attacks of the same pathogen. Okay, so they are very important in defending the body against pathogens, especially in body fluids, and that is why we have this here, referring to the body fluids, humoral B cells. So the second type of lymphocytes, what we call the T lymphocytes, or the T cells. Thymus, T. So that's where they mature. Okay. Blood cells, or what we call the formed elements, are usually made from the bone marrow. So where they mature from is very important. So the T lymphocytes mature in the thymus. So for them, they have different types. Just 1 minute. So the third type, there are 3 types of T cells. T helper cells, you can call them T helper cells. No problem, but you can still call them helper T cells, cytotoxic T cells, and then suppressor T cells. These are actually very important cells. The T lymphocytes, what their main role is to basically deal with the enemy that is hiding under cells or inside the cells, and then the enemy that is because of the normal cells becoming abnormal. So those are the two kinds of enemies for the T cells. And the response mediated by T cells is what we often call cell-mediated immunity. Okay, this here, like that. So what do these cells actually do? Cytotoxic, if you hear the word cytotoxic, kills the cells. kill the cell. You just know that if we talk about cytotoxic drugs, it means that those drugs act on microbes and they can kill the microbes or they can kill the cells. Okay, so cytotoxic T cells, they kill directly, or they can secrete chemicals that attract more phagocytes to come and kill. T helper, just like how it sounds. So the helper cells are very important in stimulating B lymphocytes and cytotoxic cells to release cytokines. Remember, these are, I call them chemical messengers that help in activation and mobilizing other cells. And then suppressor T cells, they regulate and suppress immune response after the infection has cleared. Immune responses should be controlled. If you have the immune response overreacting, then you will have a problem. So the suppressor T cells help in making sure that don't overreact, cool down. Okay, the enemy has gone. Don't continue attacking. So we said that the B cells produce antibodies. So what are these antibodies? In chemicals of life, you already know that actual antibodies are made from proteins. Okay, you still remember that. They are produced in response to presence of antigen. So remember that antigens are the ones that result into an immune response. The antigens result into an immune response. They trigger an immune response. So one of the responses is production of antibodies. So earlier on, I noted that antigens are actually of several kinds. Look at an antigen as an enemy. The enemy can come in different colors, different shapes, different heights, different ways. But definitely, if you're a good detective, you should be able to notice that this is an enemy. Okay? So whether we have bacteria, whether we have fungi, whether we have viruses, whether we have parasites, anything that we are dealing with, it will be recognized as an antigen. Okay? So anything that can trigger an immune response is what we term as antigen. Okay? So an antigen is a molecule stimulating immune responses. So the bacteria, the viruses, all those pathogens, they have those molecules that the body can recognize that this is an enemy. And those are the antigens. Okay? Self-antigen is found on host cells but do not trigger an immune response. So basically, if you know that the thief puts on a hat, you don't go shooting everyone who has a hat, because you're going to hit normal people who are having hats. Okay? So you may need to ask everyone to remove their hat, get their identification document for you to know whether they are actually enemies or not. So it's the same thing here, that yes, we talk about antigens, but there can be antigens that are on normal cells, and we call them self-antigens. Okay? So they do not trigger any immune response. So any non-self antigen is what triggers the immune response. Okay, so this bacteria, the fungi, viruses all have these non-self antigens. So how does the antibody look like? They have a Y shape. Of course, we have different types of antibodies. They can actually be called immunoglobulin proteins. Okay, they're produced in response to non-specific antigens. So they have Y shape. This part here, we call it the non-variable region or the constant region. It's only for any antibody, that's how it is. But this part here, variable region, it can vary. Okay, remember, different antibodies can be produced for different kinds of antigens. Okay, so that's so these parts here are the ones that are very helpful in attaching to the antigen, and we'll see the different mechanisms that the antibodies can use in order to destroy the antigen. So they are here. Just like saying there are many ways of killing a rat, it's the same thing we can say about antigens. They have different mechanisms they can use to destroy the antigen. Neutralization. This is by blocking the binding sites on the antigen or the toxins. Instead of having the antigen attack the cells, the part that those antigens will use to attach to the normal cells is actually neutralized. It is blocked. So it reaches the cell it wants to attack, but it can't. That is neutralization. Agglutination. All these pathogens are clumped together. All these viruses, whatever they are, they stick together with the help of antibodies, so they can't do anything. Then the antitoxins, these are released to neutralize the toxins that have been released by the antigen or the pathogen. Lysis, breakdown. And then opsonization, and is marking the enemy, marking the pathogens, coating them such that they